In the year 1905, a printer in San Francisco ran off exactly 55 copies of a little book. 55. No more. Privately circulated. Not for sale. It was a biography. A celebration of one punk's rise to fortune. And every single page of it accuses him of a crime. This was the Gilded Age. The age of the robber baron. The age when a man could ride into San Francisco with empty pockets and walk out owning a bank. And here is the joke that isn't a joke. The author, an anonymous wit calling himself his Boswell, lays out a career built on theft, bribery, watered notes, and tax evasion. And he tells it as a comedy. Because in this world, the line between the banker and the burglar was thin enough to see daylight through. The only difference, the author tells us, is the door you use. Underneath every illustration runs a proverb, sharp as a razor, cold as a vault. The hardest thing to find is an honest partner for a swindle. Pay as you go, but not if you intend going for good. This is not a history lesson. This is his private ledger. A comic biography written by a friend who knew exactly where the money came from. Let me hand you the book itself. The voice you'll hear now is the Boswell, the biographer, reading the life of the man he calls only souls. Listen for the money. It's always the money.
Arc 1. The first transaction. The subject of this sketch was born in North Carolina, and, like Topsy, he simply growed. That's all I can tell you about the start of him. I'd give you more. I can't. The oldest inhabitant, the one man who remembered, went and died on us. So the particulars die with him. It's just as well. Best not to dig too deep into his remote ancestors. He's in no way responsible for them. He represented posterity at that time. He wasn't a man looking backward. He was a man looking at the till. At the tender age of 4 years old, he took his parents by the hand. His voice trembled with emotion, and he addressed his venerable father with these words, "Go west, old man, go west." And then he bestowed upon them his blessing. He sent his own parents packing. At 4, thus freed from all encumbrances, and having a banker's instinct strong within him, he entered upon his first financial transaction. It was a transaction of exchange. Remember that word. Exchange. It'll define his whole life. He exchanged his milk bottle and contents for a nickel. A clean trade. A child's first deal. And here's where the instinct shows. He took that nickel and he put it in the nearest slot. And he won. 2 plugs of North Carolina straight-cut tobacco. His nickel was now a commodity worth more than a nickel. The boy had multiplied his capital before he could read. Now, there's a railroad in this story. The Tar Heel and Cracker Jack Railroad of North Carolina. And I want you to understand exactly how this railroad was run. It was crooked. I mean that literally, and I mean it the other way too. So crooked that even the subject of this sketch, and he is no amateur at crooked, looked at it and saw opportunity. So he sold the railroad his straight cut, his honest tobacco, the one straight thing he owned. He traded it for an interest in the road, and for his trouble, they made him a brakeman. A brakeman, with the promise of soon being broke. His first job, his first stock, and his first warning that everyone in this business is laughing at someone. He was learning the great lesson early. Advice is cheap until you begin to follow it. And the only advice worth a nickel was the advice he gave his own parents. Go west. But before he could go west, before any of it, the country tore itself in half. Because just then, the Civil War broke out, and the subject of this sketch saw, in a nation's agony, a personal opportunity. Arc 2, The Borrowed Horse. Just then the Civil War broke out, and he was keenly alive to his own interests. Always. In a panic, in a war, in a fire. Sam was alive to his own interests, so he applied for a post. Not private, not corporal. He applied to be a brigadier general in the Confederate Army. Straight to the top. There was a problem. There were several thousand Southern colonels ahead of him. Every plantation in the South had produced its own colonel. The market for generals was, you might say, oversubscribed. So he reneged his application. He withdrew. No glory in a crowded field. A man who can't be a general won't waste his time being a private. And here is where the biographer must be delicate. He borrowed a horse. I put borrowed in the gentlest terms I can. He called it borrowed. But I'll tell you plainly, men have been hung for doing exactly what he did. The rope has been the price of that particular kind of borrowing. He simply judged the odds in his favor, and he was right. He rode off. He started north. For New York. Through a war. Through 2 armies. With a horse that wasn't his. And a future that didn't exist yet. There's a proverb my friend lived by. It is lucky to find a horseshoe, if there be a horse attached. But it is unlucky if the owner be about. Sam made sure the owner was never about. A good man can't be kept down. Think of Jonah, swallowed whole by the whale and spat back out alive. That was Sam. You could swallow him whole, and he'd come back with your wallet. After many adventures, too numerous to mention, and frankly, too incriminating to print, he finally arrived at his destination, New York City, the great metropolis. He arrived without any baggage to speak of. No baggage, no money, no name, no references. Nothing but the instinct and the florid complexion he'd carry to his grave. And in the great metropolis, this man, with nothing, went into business. Honest business. For a little while. He went into the dry goods business. The dry goods business, which made him dry. And being dry, it created in him a powerful thirst. And a thirst, in a man like Sam, is never just a thirst. It's a market signal. So he made his move into a more profitable line. He went from dry goods to wet goods, and that is where the real money began. Arc 3. The wet goods fortune and the foggy night. The wet goods business. Liquor. And he prospered in it. In time, and I should note, through the till, he acquired a competency, a fortune, in the polite word, enough to live on, and then some. Through the till. Mark that. The money didn't always come over the bar. Some of it came out of the drawer and into his pocket along a path the owner never quite charted. He understood the economics of the saloon better than any man alive. The free lunch, he knew, is for the thirsty, not for the hungry. You don't feed men. You make them drink. The food is bait. The whiskey is the harvest. He acquired 2 things in the wet goods business that he would retain to the end of his days: a competency and a florid complexion. The money and the red face. He earned them both at that bar, and he never gave either back. But he became dissatisfied with New York. A man with his particular talents felt hemmed in. Too many police. Too many people who remembered his face. So he made a decision he'd been carrying since he was 4. He double-crossed the plains to California. Double-crossed, and I use his word, not mine, because crossing the plains was hard, and Sam never did anything in a straight line if a crooked one paid better. He arrived in San Francisco on a dark and foggy night. The fog matters. Everything Sam did best, he did in the dark. And on this particular dark night, he went to a bank. He got into the specific bank, not through the front door. He got in with a sectional jimmy, a burglar's tool, the kind that comes apart and hides in a coat. He went into banking, you might say, through the window. He crept to the safe. He had crossed a continent for this moment, and he opened it, and it was empty. Nothing left in the safe. Someone had been there before him. He had been beaten to his own burglary, and he knew exactly who'd done it. A job put up by the Scotch, he said. Beaten by the Scotch. And, he'd admit this himself, even up to date, the Scotch has often got the best of him. The drink and the people. Both robbed him blind. So there he stood, a continent crossed, a bank burgled, and not 1 cent to show for it. The empty safe taught him the great lesson of his life. There is no future in breaking and entering when other men get there first. The hardest thing to find, he always said, is an honest partner for a swindle. He'd just learned it the hard way, so he made a decision that changed everything. If the window doesn't pay, try the front door. Arc 4, through the front door. So he inquired his way to the corner of Bush and Sansom streets, and he entered upon his duties, this time, I'm pleased to report, through the front door, at Curfey's Bank. The front door. That was the discovery. Everything he'd tried to take with a jimmy bar in the fog, he now took with a handshake in the daylight. Same money, better odds, no rope at the end of it. Here he prospered. And the biographer notes, carefully, that he prospered by having a clean record and a clean face. He always shaved himself. He always shaved himself. And sometimes, he shaved his customers' notes. Do you follow me? To shave a note is to clip its value, to skim the interest, to take a slice the customer never sees. Both were sharp transactions. Both used the same blade. Both being sharp transactions, things were never dull at the bank. They called it the first rational. Rational, because every theft was reasoned out. Every swindle had its arithmetic. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was wild. It was all rational. And now he became a close student of 2 things, political economy and personal economy, and he mastered both. Let me tell you what each one meant to a man like Sam. Political economy, he discovered, consisted entirely of one rule. Do not pay more than $2 apiece for votes on election day. $2 a vote. That was the whole of his politics. Buy cheap. Win the city. That was political economy. Now, personal economy. That was different. Personal economy meant living on his relatives. And 10 cents a day. 10 cents a day. A man pulling a fortune out of the first rationale, shaving notes and buying votes, and he fed himself on a dime and his cousin's kitchens. He never spent his own money. That, to Sam, was the very soul of personal economy. His chief amusement was playing cards, and he won. He won every hand, and, the biographer tells us, he won every heart by his meek and lowly manner. His meek and lowly manner, and his delightful parsimony with regard to facts. He was stingy with the truth the way other men are stingy with money. He gave out as little of it as the game required. Never a fact more than necessary. The still small voice of conscience, my friend always said, would need a megaphone to attract the attention of some people. He was speaking, I believe, from personal experience. At present, he enjoys an income that is reported very large. To everybody. Everybody, that is, except the commissioner of taxes. To the taxman, somehow, the income shrinks to almost nothing. Funny how that works. He had arrived. The boy who traded a milk bottle for a nickel was now a great financier. And great financiers, in this country, get offered something dangerous. They get offered positions of trust. And one offer in particular nearly finished him. Arc 5. The offer he refused. He finally became a great financier, and the offers came in. Positions of trust and emolument, trust and profit. The two sweetest words a swindler ever hears. They came to him by the dozen. Among them, and this is the one that mattered, a directorship in the Equitable Life Assurance Society of New York. The Equitable, one of the largest financial institutions in the world, a seat at the very top. Now, you'd think a man like Sam would leap at it, a directorship at the Equitable, the thing he'd dreamed of since he tried to be a brigadier general. But he turned it down. And here is why. He was mindful, the biographer says, of the fate of Alexander the Great. Alexander, who conquered the whole known world and then found there was nothing left to do but die of it. Greatness, Sam knew, has a way of killing you. But there was a sharper reason. The Equitable, in those very years, was a nest of scandal. The directors were playing what the biographer calls, and I love this phrase, the little game of hide and seek. Hide and seek. The respectable director by day, the Mr. Hyde looting the company by night. And the seeking, that was the prosecutors, coming to find them all out. So Sam declined to play. He turned down the directorship. He would not sit at that table. And the biographer states the result plainly, with the only sentence of pure praise in the entire book. Hence, he writes, he is not in jail. That is the achievement. That is the crown of his career. Every other man who reached for that much was ruined or imprisoned. Sam knew exactly when to stop reaching, and so he is not in jail. The highest praise a swindler can be paid. He had a genius the others lacked, not for taking, anyone can take. His genius was for knowing precisely how much he could take and still walk away free. He left the last fatal dollar on the table, every time. And then, late in life, he tested one more theory. Dr. Osler, the famous physician, had a notion in those days that men over a certain age were useless and ought to be chloroformed, put quietly to sleep. Sam declined to admit Dr. Osler's theory was correct, at least as far as chloroform goes, because he tried it. He tried a whole bottle of it. He drank down a bottle of chloroform to test the theory personally, and nothing happened. Because, and the biographer says this with total confidence, nothing that ever came out of a bottle could hurt him. He'd survived the wet goods business and the scotch. A little chloroform was nothing. He is still with us, and we hope he may remain so for many years. A good man can't be kept down. Think of Jonah. You cannot swallow this man. The whale tried. The scotch tried. The Equitable tried. The chloroform tried. And here he sits, red-faced and rich, outlasting them all. Arc 6, the Celestial Depository. So we come to the end. And even the end, for Sam, is a financial arrangement. The biographer looks ahead to the final day, and he sees it the only way a banker can see it, as a transfer of accounts. When Gabriel toots his final horn, when the last trumpet sounds, we feel confident, he writes, that St. Peter will make him the custodian of Peter's pence. Custodian of Peter's pence, the keeper of heaven's own collection plate. They will hand this man, this note shaver, this vote buyer, this borrower of horses, the treasury of paradise itself, and the biographer means it as a compliment. Who better to guard the money than the man who knows Emba's every trick to steal it? And when the angels and the choir invisible trumpet him a gladsome welcome to the gates ajar, the gates of heaven standing open for him, We have every confidence that he will step in and beat the band. He will step in and beat the band. Of course he will. He has beaten every other band on earth. Why should heaven be different? He will walk through those gates the way he finally walked through the bank door, straight in, head high, already counting. As for those sorrowing friends he leaves behind, and the biographer counts himself among them, they will erect a simple, touching, modest little tablet to his memory, and on it will be inscribed these words: "Here lies Sam, whom we deplore. Thou art not dead, just gone before." Gone before, not dead, just ahead of us in line, the way he was always ahead of everyone in line. Take not more than thy share of glory, for we come next. Even in death, they have to warn him. Don't take more than your share, because taking more than his share is the only thing Sam ever did. Memento mori. Remember that you must die. And the last proverb of the book sits beneath it all. Pay as you go, but not if you intend going for good. Don't settle your debts if you're never coming back to face them. That was his philosophy of money, and it seems his philosophy of dying. That is the whole life. Born nobody in North Carolina, traded a milk bottle for a nickel, stole a horse, ran a bar, jimmied a bank, shaved 1,000 notes, bought a city for $2 a vote, and died, or rather, went before, a great financier. Not in jail. Beloved, custodian of heaven's money, a successful banker.
55 copies. Privately circulated. A man's friends gathered to celebrate him by printing, in gold-stamped pages, every crime he ever committed and calling it a life well lived. That was the joke of the Gilded Age, and the book never blinks at it. The honest partner is the hardest thing to find. The conscience needs a megaphone. The taxman gets the small number, and everyone else gets the large one. They laughed because they recognized him. Every man in that room was a little bit Sam. He took exactly as much as he could, and not $1 more. And so, unlike the men of the Equitable, he is not in jail. That, the archive tells us with a straight face, is what success looked like. But the archive holds another voice, and it could not be more different from this red-faced banker counting heaven's pennies. A man born enslaved in Virginia, who rode west into the mountains, lived among the Crow, and was raised up to war chief, and lived to write down every fight, every winter, every fortune in horses and furs.